This is episode number 23 of DevOpsParadox with Darin Pope and Viktor Farcic. I am Darin.
And I'm Viktor.
In today's episode, we are going to talk about feature flags.
No. We're going to talk about feature toggles.
Feature toggles, excuse me. Feature toggles. That's completely okay, because flags are flags and toggles are toggles. We move a switch. What does it matter? Come on.
I'm kidding, man. There's like 27 different names for the same thing.
I know. I mean, I'm an old guy. We've talked about being old. So I used Arceus back in the day when Netflix was, before that got sunsetted. I was looking at it the other day. It's like the last update was either 2 or 3 years ago. So it's like, okay, it's been a while since I've used it. Spring Cloud Config, right? All these things. There's lots of different things out there. Number one, you probably shouldn't be rolling your own anymore. Even if you use something like Arceus, it's still at least there. And we've brought on a friend of ours, Erez. He works with Rollout. Erez, thanks for showing up today.
Yeah, pleasure of being here. Thanks for inviting me.
Cool. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more, and then we'll start talking about feature toggles. Good grief.
So hi everybody. I'm Erez. I used to be one of the co-founders of Rollout, which is a feature management solution. Today I'm part of CloudBees. I'm originally Israeli, but now I live in San Francisco, and I have a technical background. So I used to be a system DevOps engineer for a very long while before starting Rollout.
Cool. So Viktor, why don't you start rumbling about feature toggles?
Yeah, so
because I'm all in on them, man. It's like it was the greatest thing back in the 80s.
No, it's exactly. I mean, I used rollouts. Feature toggles, feature flags, whatever you call it, for many years, but not in a while. And in my head, feature toggles is a if statement that you with a comment to do remove me, and that's about it. And if you want to go fancy, in my world, kind of like 10 years ago, if you want to go fancy, then it's an if statement that reads query parameter or environment variable or something like that, right? But still with a comment, remove me.
Yes.
Yeah. So feature flag are essentially the same things. It's an if statement in the code that basically tells the software, should I run this piece of code or should I not run this piece of code? And it's been a while. It's been around for a very long while. People have been using this for a very long time, specifically mature engineering organizations. And I think one of the things that we are seeing in the market in the past few years is that there was a lot of maturity in that sense, and more companies have understood that they need this, but in a more professional way. And as we move forward, I'll talk about some of the things that we've seen that pushes people from a homegrown solution to kind of a managed solution. And one of them is of course, that to do comment in the code, remove me, that becomes at one point a problem.
I would disagree. Remove me's are always good. That means I still have a job.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're already touching on this, so one of the things with feature flags is that once you start doing those at scale, that means that you have tens of hundreds, if not thousands of those. How do you manage those? How do you manage both the code pieces, but also, what is being deployed? Who sees that feature? What's the audit log looking like? Who changed this? What users are exposed to this? What features can I remove from the code? So there's a lot of question around the lifecycle of a feature flag, and a system is supposed to answer those type of questions.
But should you have like hundreds or thousands? Doesn't that, to me, that sounds like you were too lazy to kind of clean up the system.
Yeah,
after a while, right?
So it's a good point. So let's step back for a second and talk about the main maybe use cases that we've seen companies leverage feature flags for. So this is a DevOps podcast and everything, but there's a lot of use case for feature flags. I've seen that the majority of the use cases, there's 4 dominant use cases. 2 of them are around engineering. So safety and speed of software delivery. So safety is, common sense. Have a kill switch around the feature. If it breaks, if it causes some problem, turn that feature off immediately and avoid that emergency release, and also be more kind of proactive about your feature rollouts. So, roll out that feature to a subset of the user base, measure the impact, and then decide if you want to roll this to everybody. So that's on the safety side. Speed is around, moving to trunk-based development or merging incomplete code to the main branch while it's turned off. So just helping the team deploy faster at a predictable cadence. So these two use cases are solely around engineering. But then you have experimentation, which is built on top of feature flag, the ability to actually measure the impact of a feature on business stuff, KPIs. And at the heart of experimentation, it's a feature flag. That's the mechanism. And then the last use case, which is more, again, product oriented, is feature customization. So essentially giving Viktor and Darin and Erez a different experience based on who they are. And not in a sense of a deployment or an experiment. And so some of these features some of these feature flags stay in the code. They're not being removed, from the code base constantly. And even engineering feature flags, specifically the kill switch feature flags, sometimes are being, kept in the code. And the last thing I'll say around kind of the management of that piece is that, at any given point, it doesn't mean you have tens and hundreds of feature flags, but you do have a bunch of those. Some of them are at various states of deployment, and some of them are being removed. But you don't have just one or two. You have a few of those, and you need to manage what's going on with them. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, it does. And when you kind of did you notice some kind of similarity between, teams that use feature flags that they usually are of certain type? If I tell you this team you never met is using feature flags, can you say something like they most likely are like this or that, or they, I'm inventing now, they're most likely using trunk-based development? Or is there any other common denominator between companies or teams who do that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think companies that leverage feature flag are usually more mature organizations. You have to have some processes around, because feature flags does add some overhead to the engineering processes. So you have to have a bit of a mature organization that knows what they're doing in order to do feature flags at scale. There's definitely a difference between the main drive. So if a team main drive is to do experimentation more on the product side, then, that's going to be a completely different use case than engineers-led feature flags, where engineers just want to deploy safer and faster. And usually, teams that would do feature flags would already be heavily involved in CI/CD, or at least CI for that sense. If you're not doing CI, if you're not doing CD, if you're not deploying, at least a month on a monthly cadence, you're not going to do feature flags. So if you're going to do, it's going to be very limited. That's what we've seen. So there's a clear correlation between teams that deploy a lot to the need to do feature flags.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question about how do you define a mature organization, and you sort of led into that with if they're not deploying at least once a month, if they're not doing trunk-based. I mean, it's how often do we really see mature organizations? I know from the day part of my job, most orgs aren't that mature.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. It's fun to say that, but I think that today, if you look at CI, at least, it's everybody's doing some form of CI, either Jenkins or some other solutions, I think that CI is already both commoditized and widely used, and I think feature flag is going to have the same type of experience looking forward. I think it's going to be one of these standard packages or solutions that companies leverage in their modern software development. Yeah.
Of the four things that you called out safety, speed, business KPI, and basically personalization.
Yep.
Is what it boils down to. Which one of those four do you think is the top one today? Just in general, whether it's through Rollout or what you've seen talking to competitors.
Absolutely. I think I would coupled together safety and speed. I think they tie together. I think that, there's a bunch of very interesting use cases for feature flags like experimentation or personalization. But I think at the core, it's still an engineering practice, and most of the value is captured on the engineering side. And I think that should be, at least from my perspective, what we're seeing is that it becomes more and more part of the software infrastructure in that sense. So I definitely put most of the effort on the engineering perspective, speed and safety.
Well, to me, would be curious, and I'm asking this because I haven't seen it yet, and I'm now wondering why not. Feature flagging would be kind of a very good combination with canary deployments, right? You roll out part of it, and then you continue, you monitor some metrics, and if it goes bad, just kind of feature flag back automatically, right?
You got it. And so one of the things that, at least from my perspective, is part of the future of feature flags is that automation piece. Because at the end, you want to do a canary deployment of your version, but then you want to take that canary deployment all the way to the feature level and both look at the, engineering metrics, but also kind of the business metrics and decide if I should roll this feature to everybody. And there's some organizations that are already so mature that they're doing that type of automation. So companies like Facebook, and they have a system called Gatekeeper that everybody's familiar with, and they're automating some of these feature deliveries as part of their canary deployments. But I think in the future, a lot of these, because at the end, that safety speed or that safety capability around feature flag is all about getting a feature from 0% deployment to 100% deployment and making sure I'm not breaking anything. And that piece can be automated eventually. We still have to get a lot of trust of people into that system, no matter what system is it. But at the end, you want to automate that piece that goes from 0 to 100% deployment.
Once you get to 100, why would you ever remove me?
Aha, good question. So, I have my own opinion about this, but I think
that's fine. This show's about opinion.
Yeah, no, and so I'll talk about my opinion and both what I'm seeing in the industry. So to your point, I've seen some companies that don't care. They keep the feature flag within the code base. They don't care about this. And some companies are very structured around when to remove the feature flag, and some companies are some of the flags they remove, some of them they don't. I think that, and also, my perspective has changed over time. I think initially I thought that, keep the features. Who cares? It's just another if statement. It's not like you don't have a bunch of if statements in the code already. But I think that if you have a lot of feature flags in the code, debugging becomes complicated. And then, somebody could at one point say, oh, what is that flag doing here? I'm going to remove it. And then you don't have any idea what's going to break because you're not sure if other flags are dependent on that. And so you're creating a lot of dependencies within the code base. And I do think that specifically around these rolling feature flags that are essentially meant to prevent catastrophes, you should remove those, and you should have a process around removing those. And one of the things that I've kind of seen is that the more mature companies are removing them from the code base.
It makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have things in your code that are not used. Doesn't matter whether it's a feature flag or anything else. I mean, to be that similar, like I've seen people commenting parts of the code when they write new code and leaving hundreds of commented lines of code as if it doesn't matter, and it actually does.
No, absolutely. I agree with you guys. The other thing I'll mention is that when you look at mature organization in terms of their feature flags, the other thing is that they're doing is they have a strong emphasis on merging code to the main branch while the code is either breaking or incomplete. And of course they do that behind a feature flag. And I think, if you look at a mature organization, one of the ideas is we want to commit fast. We want to keep the main branch updated. And one of the mechanisms that we are going to use is feature flags. And we're going to do that with feature flag. And that way we're going to, that's the mentality that we have as a team.
Yeah, so You mean it allows you to release to production half-baked feature without affecting anybody, right?
Exactly.
Makes sense. I mean, basically, we would be talking now about removing probably one of the last obstacles from people working directly with trunk-based development, right?
Yep, exactly. And I think, so if you look at trunk-based development, one of the motivations to move to trunk-based development is to avoid these long-lived feature branches where you have this feature branch you've been working on for a while, you want to merge it, and now you have this merge hell with a bunch of dependencies. And so people want to constantly merge to the main branch and avoid that merge hell. And so, I mean, it's a great approach. But, it becomes a problem once some of the code is not fully baked. And so feature flag are instrumental in helping you solve that problem.
I know how I dealt with it years ago, but what's the current way of dealing with dependencies between toggles? Or what's the patterns for that today? Because honestly, that part of my development doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, so again, I was part of the team and I am still part of the team that built a feature management solution. So kind of one of the pros of building a feature management platform as opposed to a homegrown solution is that you could invest in these type of requirements. So you could allow the interface to manage that dependency and to alert if you are trying to do something that would affect the dependency. So that's part of the platform. That's kind of the main thing that I've seen.
Okay, that was an easy answer. That's good to hear. Because that was a big pain in the butt when I was using Arceus. And it was just trying to, I've got nested flags in here. What happens if I throw this combination of switches?
Yeah, and
it's a Rube Goldberg machine at that point.
And listen, it's not like even the most advanced system, it's not like a silver bullet. So it's not like a feature management solution sucks the brain out of the engineer. I mean, you still have to have smart people managing the system and avoid pitfalls and stuff like that. So, we do our best to help, but the developers need to, again, they need to be smart and they need to know what they're doing. And so, again, you write the code, you need to figure that stuff out.
You take that one, Viktor.
You just destroyed the dream of many companies to finally externalize everything to not smart people, getters, setters, writers, and that feature flaggings would make it all work.
Yeah, I think that's a fallacy management always have, that some tool is going to solve all of our engineering pain points, and they miss the notion that this is engineering work. We're building something. There's going to be tools that would help us do this, but at the end, we have to have good builders. So
who normally comes and who's the buyer? Is that the engineers or CTOs, or kind of who propagates normally feature flags in a company?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think some of that is changing. But as opposed to CI/CD, which is kind of the DevOps people, feature flags are more owned by the engineering team, so software developers. And usually, what we've seen is that it starts all the way from the single developer in a team that says, "Okay, this is cool. Either I did something bad recently and I wished I would have had feature flags," or some engineering management team lead, VP, director of engineering that says, I want to sleep better at night and I want to work faster. And how do I do that? And so at one point he'll discover feature flags. And surprisingly enough, most of the prospects that I've met and talked to, and I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of those, they are aware of the concept, did something internally, either like a, if and else statement in the code, or all the way to like half-baked homegrown solutions that, read a JSON configuration file from somewhere. And somebody edit that JSON manually. And so there's a lot of, knowledge and understanding already. And so a lot of the times we would get people that have a homegrown solution. It starts to become complicated and a lot of stakeholders want to be a part of that. And so they would reach out and say, okay, we're looking for a solution. But again, to your point, it usually would be on the engineering side, like development. And in some cases, it would start actually from the product side that would say, okay, we need that type of capability on the product side, but we know engineers have something, so maybe we could join forces and, and a product would reach out.
I see Darin is preparing to say something.
I want to believe that. I really do. I still have a hard time buying that developers are actually in control of what's going on at a company.
Well, I think that's part of the things that when I've mentioned earlier that I think some of this stuff are already changing. I think today, at least for my world, kind of the modern software team, a lot of these engineering tools start from, they go bottom up and not necessarily top down, meaning it's not like, the CIO or the VP comes and says, okay, this is a new tool, you have to use it. It actually starts, a specific team inside a company adopts a solution for, whatever that is, and then it expands gradually into the entire company. And I've seen this both with feature flags, but with other solutions, on the APM side. I guess I think it's, more modern SaaS type of companies than the older type of enterprise companies. But that's, that's what we've seen. And of course, these smaller companies, not necessarily smaller, but it's newer companies. Of course, they adopt tools faster and they move faster in general.
Yeah, I think that we have a clash of cultures right now here, right?
We do.
Our experience is usually with big enterprises, where 57 levels above you, somebody decides and tells you, you're going to do this. Well, I guess Erez experience...
And they're still 15 levels from the top.
Exactly. Yeah, but your experience is more like, I guess, with the more agile companies, to say something. I mean, tech companies.
Yeah, exactly. So again, SaaS, mobile applications, teams that are, evolving faster. You could have like a random developer just says, hey, I've seen you guys somewhere, not even say, just sign up for, the free trial and then start using it. And then at one point says, okay, where do I buy? And then expand internally in his team. And even companies that are larger. So just a quick example, Zendesk. It's a meaningful company. It's a new company. It's a tech company. But like a company like Zendesk, a developer or a team lead from within Zendesk mobile team reached out, and that's how the engagement started. And so it's not necessarily smaller company, but I guess to your point, more tech companies, more SaaS mobile companies. That's what we've seen. They, again, this is not something just for feature flag. I think this is across the industry.
Yeah, to me, that distinguish comes with a question. Did you exist more than 5 years ago? No, you're a good company.
Exactly. Listen, I think, and to that point, I'm already, I've spoken to companies huge, like, all the way from AT&T to Farmers Insurance to other companies. And again, at these type of companies, the decision is usually VP level or director level. And, it's definitely a different type of kind of buying process.
Yeah, still. Again, it's like the X-Files, man. I want to believe. It's still not there yet.
Yeah.
Now I have a product idea for you.
Go ahead.
So everything you do is like real life right now, and you're probably old enough to remember the when you break the build, the Nerf guns go off.
Of course.
You guys need to ship an actual physical console to where you can go actually flip some switches.
So
like that, like have a physical thing to where it's sort of like in the DevOps center,
that
right?
Would be cool. Like, you mean like kind of piano type of stuff, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, or it's like a big wall of switches or something, and maybe let's throw some IoT stuff in here. Let's work with Particle.
Wow.
I don't know if you've dealt with Particles in San Francisco too, right? Hey, look, it's really late for Viktor. It's past end of day for me because it's almost my bedtime. So if Viktor's still up, it's past my bedtime. I'm semi-serious
Well,
I mean, that could be a very interesting interface because, so Victor, you haven't worked with Rollout hands-on yet, right? I know I haven't.
Haven't worked what?
With Rollout.
No. With Rollout, no, not yet. I mean, with concept, yeah. No, and I'm ashamed to say that I'm supposed to be, but I still haven't had time. But real soon.
We have day jobs too, right? That would be an interesting, just weirdness thing to do.
it would be.
Okay, so let me ask this, and without divulging names, because you've gone with names that I would never even list in public. What's been the weirdest? Again, without naming names, but you can name the space if you want.
Yeah.
What's been the weirdest implementation that you've had people use specifically Rollout for, or in the pre-incarnations of Rollout?
It's a good point. Pre-incarnation of Rollout, just to give you guys, and I haven't shared this, but I've before Rollout, I've built a product that allowed, and that's kind of where Rollout came from. Before Rollout, I've built a product, not me myself, but like the entire team. We've built a product that allows teams to actually inject code remotely to their mobile application, iOS and Android. And the idea is that on the mobile side, the release cycles are terrible because you have the App Store and all of that stuff. And so if you have a bug in production on the mobile side, it takes you days, if not weeks, to deploy a new version. And so we allowed you to actually deploy, inject code remotely and actually replace original implementation with some new implementation long story, but before Apple decided to shut that down. So there I've seen some crazy stuff being done. Again, without naming names, we had, all kinds of companies with millions of users, tens of millions of users. And they would just, they've used this to anything, all the way from marketing stuff to basically turning off and on things. But like they would inject, like messages around competition. If you did something specific, they've changed the UI, they've changed the messaging. I mean, crazy stuff because we gave you a lot of flexibility. You actually injected code remotely. Feature flags are more structured that way. But I think that I've seen, so feature flags, again, you guys are thinking, we've talked mostly about Boolean flags, which are on and off, but flags can be string based. So that means they don't have just true and false, they have various permutations. So it can be like a string flag, which is like a message, and it could be hello world, I like you, and whatever. And so you could actually experiment with different types of messages and have the ability to decide which users get which types of messages. So that's also a feature flag. And so there you have more creative people doing some more stuff in terms of their usage of feature flags. Kind of a long answer, but
yeah. When you started going down code injection as a business, that scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, but it was a very novel solution for a very real problem. Listen, at one point we supported almost 100 million monthly active devices on the mobile side, and listen, I got so many at that time. We got a lot of. Imagine you are helping somebody solve a production iOS bug in 5 minutes instead of waiting 4 days with the App Store reviews and all of that. People would love us. They would tweet, "Oh my God, I just solved a production bug with Rollout." It was the company name was Rollout, and so the value was huge. But again,
but the reason why the value was huge is because they sucked as iOS developers.
Well, bugs happen to everybody, man. You should know this. It doesn't matter how good of a developer you are. At one point, companies have bugs in production. I mean, that's the whole notion around feature flags, or some of it, is, okay, shit happens. We need to be prepared for that.
Well, you never read my code. My code's perfect. I've never had a bug.
Yeah, you probably do waterfall. That's the way to go, waterfall.
Well, when you only need to do one release every 30 years, my code's perfect. Okay. And we're sort of here at time. We'll come back for wrap-ups in just a second. We'll talk about the books real fast. DevOps Paradox has been out now for about a month. Toolkit has been out for about the same amount of time.
Yep.
So, but we're recording in the past, so it's only been a couple of days, but in reality, it's a month by the time you're listening to this. And again, we still don't know what Victor's doing next. So
that's because Viktor doesn't know what he's doing next either.
Well, I do know what you're going to be doing next, because at the time it is for you, you've still got about 3 hours left in your day. Maybe.
That's incorrect. At least 4. Now it's almost midnight.
4 hours now. That's true. Oh, yeah. So, okay. Good grief. I don't know how you do it, dude.
Wow.
So you go to bed at 4. I go to bed at 8. Right. But I get up at 4 o'clock. So that's a whole nother thing.
Exactly.
I do sleep at the sleep weird hours.
I cannot fall asleep until I know that you woke up and you're safe.
The sad thing is that's usually about how it's working. Oh my goodness. All right. So books, go buy them. We talked about this, I think, in the last episode. Don't just go buy it. Go buy them and expense them.
Exactly.
And let somebody else pay for it. Go ahead and buy boxes of the books, right? That'll help numerous things. If you have any questions or comments specifically about this episode, you can reach out to us on the Slack team DevOps 20. That's DevOps, the number 2 and the number 0. Sign up for a free account. Join the podcast channel. You can ask us questions there. However, if you want to ask us a question in a real human voice, whereas when we talked to John the other day in an undead voice, I said non-live. He was our first non-dead person. Non-dead. I wasn't even calling it right. Undead. I mean, he was the first non-dead person. Undead. But if you want to be a live person asking us a question, you can leave us a voice message using Voxer. Once you set up a free personal account at Voxer, you can add DevOpsParadox as a contact and just leave us a message right there. Also, if you're listening via Apple Podcast or any of the other podcast apps, please consider giving us a rating and review. We haven't asked for these much, sort of on purpose, but now we're starting to get some traction. In fact, I was just looking at some of our analytics, which is fairly funny. You probably haven't seen it yet because it just popped up, but we're number 690 in Croatia for business and technology on Spotify. Hey, it's a number, right? We'll throw numbers around for a little bit. Why not? Yeah, we're having fun with this. Numbers are great, but numbers are numbers for us. This is just fun for us. We get to let off a little bit of steam. So anyway, the links for the Slack workspace, the Voxer account, and also how to leave a review are all in the description of this episode. We'll start closing comments right now. Victor, you'll go first. Erez, we'll let you go last, and then I'll final close. So you got nothing.
I live in Stone Age. I'm still with if-else statements. No comment. I'll leave to Erez.
The one thing I would say is that for all the software developers that are listening to this, I think what I've seen, both with Rollout, but also prior to that, I think feature flags are one of the highest ROI tools that you could use, no matter which platform or homegrown solution. I think it's easy to implement and easy to get going. It doesn't have to be like 0 or nothing. You could start with one flag or one feature, gate it, and see how it gives you value. And I encourage everybody to start playing with this because I think that near future everybody's going to use it.
Cool. And I'll also second that just use it, right? Even if you can't get to trunk-based development today, hey, you need to be able to put up oh crap, we're under attack page, right? That's a good use for a feature flag.
Exactly.
Even if you do nothing else. Victor, you're shaking your head. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, I mean, whomever experienced outage in production understands why this is such a good idea. Especially those that require 7 days to recuperate afterwards.
Yep. Okay, cool. Erez, thanks for hanging out with us again today.
Pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Victor, have a good evening since you still have a few more hours to go. Don't write another book in the in-between. You won't. Thanks again to you for listening to episode number 23 of DevOps Paradox.